Now I have the honor of introducing Bruce Katz, who is Vice President and Director at Brookings Institution, one of the world's leading think tanks. And coming from Monday Morning, a small Danish think tank, it makes you a bit humble. Brookings is famous worldwide for its work in more than 100 years. I know that Bruce is very passionate about how we can shape the next economy and a more sustainable economy, and how cities can help us do that. Bruce heads the work on the Metropolitan Policy Program at Brookings Institution. He is an advisor for leaders at federal, state, regional, and municipal level, with a specific focus on competitiveness in metropolitan areas. That means innovation, human capital, infrastructure, housing, etc. Bruce has actually worked with presidents, including Bill Clinton and President Obama. Bruce co-led the Housing and Cities Transition Team when Obama came into power. So, normally he advises presidents. Today he advises us. Give a warm welcome to Bruce Katz.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. It's an absolute pleasure to be here in Copenhagen. This is my first visit to your beautiful, inspiring city. I want to thank Realdania, Monday Morning, the Danish Architectural Center, for a round of discussions and tours which have really fueled my imagination about the possibilities of sustainable development, sustainable design, and sustainable growth. I want today to be a participatory event, so I put my Twitter account up there. If you want to tweet back at me as we move forward, please feel free. Now, for the past 3 years at Brookings, we have hammered home the notion that the United States must pursue a different growth model post-recession, a next economy that is driven by exports, powered by low carbon, fueled by innovation, rich with opportunity, and led by metropolitan areas. For today's talk, I would like to put the clean economy right in the middle of this growth model and unveil the scale, the scope, and the spatial geography of this promising growth engine. Now, the focus on the economy is purposeful and political. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions is obviously an environmental and energy imperative. But in the aftermath of the Great Recession, when the United States still has an 11.4 million jobs deficit, and at a time of enormous partisan division and ideological polarization, we must emphasize that the shift to a low-carbon market or low-carbon economy is a market proposition and an economic transformation as profound as the information revolution, capable of producing more and better jobs. With that context, I will make 3 points. First, the clean economy is a significant, diverse, emerging market in the United States, already populated by some 2.7 million jobs. It is disproportionately manufacturing and export intensive and offers better prospects for low and middle skilled workers than the national economy as a whole. This is exactly the kind of economy we want to build post-recession. Second, cities and metropolitan areas are the vanguard of the clean economy due to their concentration of innovative drivers, as well as the built environment in which most people live, work, and play. This is an economy marked by specialization, where disparate metros have distinct niches in different sectors of the economy. I'll return to that. And finally, delivering the clean economy will require a new kind of economy shaping and placemaking at the metropolitan scale. In the absence of federal leadership in our country, this is beginning to happen in the United States, led by what we call a pragmatic caucus of leaders that cross sectors, jurisdictions, parties, and disciplines, forming what Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter calls the Get Stuff Done Party. Cities and metropolitan areas are adapting business planning practices honed in the private sector to the task of building out their distinct clean economy sectors. At the same time, they are engaged in a new kind of placemaking to enable and catalyze this productive, innovative, sustainable, and inclusive growth. So let's start with my first point. The clean economy is a significant, diverse, emerging market in the United States. Last year, Brookings released a report called Sizing the Clean Economy, and an interactive website to spur further research, policy, and practice. In total, we found there were 2.7 million clean economy jobs all across the United States. And to put that in perspective, the clean economy is nearly twice the size of the biosciences field, 60% of the 4.8 million strong IT sector, and as you can tell, it is more jobs than fossil fuel related industries. Now, our definition of the clean economy is as follows: any economic activity measured in terms of establishments and jobs that produces goods and services with an environmental benefit or adds values to such products using skills or technologies that are uniquely applied to those products. This definition yields a broad and varied picture of economic activity, old and new, public and private, green and blue. At the highest level, we find establishments and jobs grouping together in 5 discernible categories: renewable energy, energy and resource efficiency, greenhouse gas reduction, environmental management and recycling, agricultural and natural resource conservation, and education and compliance. These categories then naturally break down into fine-grained segments, ultimately 39 in all. Renewable energy has 9 segments, including solar and geothermal power and renewable energy services. Energy and resource efficiency has 13 segments: electric vehicle technology, water-efficient products, greenhouse gas reduction, environmental management, recycling, 12 segments: green chemical products, professional environmental services, and so on. You get the idea. Each of these segments, in turn, then has a distinct economic profile and a distinct spatial geography, given the special assets and attributes of different places. Let's just drill down a bit, because I think it's important to understand the concept. Under energy and resource efficiency, let's focus on one area that's critical to sustainable cities: green architecture and construction services. In the United States, this segment employs over 56,000 people, and it grew by an annual average of 6.4% between 2003 and 2010. That's fairly fast. It includes firms such as Burns & McDonnell Engineering in Kansas City, McKinstry & Company in Seattle, and Gensler in San Francisco, all of whom are committed to sustainable construction and design. Also under energy and resource efficiency category is public mass transit, the largest clean economy sector in the United States, with over 350,000 jobs. This sector grew by an average annual rate of about 4% between 2003 and 2010. Now, the 3 metros with the largest number of public mass transit jobs are not surprisingly among the 5 largest metros in the United States, led by New York, followed by Chicago and Philadelphia. Another sector critical to green city development is green building materials, which falls under the category of greenhouse gas reduction, environmental management, and recycling. This segment employs over 76,000 people in the United States, though it did not grow much between 2003 and 2010, and includes a range of firms from Interface Flooring Systems, which is a global leader in design, production, environmentally responsible carpet out of Atlanta, 3Form Inc. in Salt Lake City, a manufacturer of sustainable building materials, and Temple Inland Company in Austin, Texas, which is another producer of environmentally friendly building materials. One more definitional cut to consider, which is critical, I think, to Denmark and Copenhagen. We have identified a group of young, super innovative clean tech industries that cross multiple categories and show enormous growth potential. These industries are populated by companies with a median age of 15 years or less, and most notably, this portfolio, including wind power, battery technology, biofuels, and smart grid, grew about 8% since 2003, or twice as fast as the rest of the economy. The clean economy, however, is not just broad and diverse, it is disproportionately productive. It is export intensive, taking advantage of the demand for clean goods and services coming from abroad. In 2009, clean economy establishments exported almost $54 billion from the United States. It's about $49.5 billion in goods, about $4.5 billion in services. Significant clean economy establishments are twice as export intensive as the national economy. Over $20,000 worth of exports is sold for every job in the clean economy each year, compared to just $10,400 worth of exports for the average US job. The export orientation of the clean economy provides a platform for more exports tomorrow. With rising nations rapidly urbanizing, the demand for sustainable growth in all its dimensions will only grow, and the US has the potential to serve that demand. Now, the clean economy also supports a production-driven innovation economy. We find a higher percentage of scientists than the national economy. 10% of clean economy jobs are in science and engineering, compared to 5% in the US economy generally. And as we all know, manufacturing and innovation are inextricably linked. Now, this provides a stark challenge to our country. We will innovate less unless we produce more. And by one account, our account, the clean economy is a vehicle for production. 26% of all clean economy jobs are in manufacturing, compared to just 9% of jobs in the economy as a whole. And manufacturing accounts for a majority of the jobs in over half of the clean economy segments, with many sectors having a supermajority of production-oriented jobs. Solar and wind energy have more than 2/3 of their jobs in manufacturing. And some segments, including appliances, water-efficient products, and EV technology, have over 90% of their jobs in manufacturing. The good news is clean economy manufacturing is growing, part of an overall resurgence of manufacturing in the United States. Finally, absolutely critical point, the clean economy is opportunity rich. It provides prospects for a wide range of workers and good wages up and down the skills ladder. This segment of the economy is easy to enter, available to people of all skills levels. 45% of all clean economy jobs are held by workers with just a high school diploma, compared to only 37% of US jobs. Once a worker enters the field, he or she is more likely to receive career-building training. 41% of clean jobs offer medium to long-term training, compared to 23% of all US jobs. The payoff is higher wages. The median wage in the clean economy in the United States is almost $44,000 for the average occupation. That's significantly higher than the national equivalent of $38,000 and change. So in summary, the clean economy is exactly the kind of economy we want to build post-recession. Export-driven, innovation-fueled, opportunity-rich, balanced. Second major finding. Metros, cities and metros, are the vanguard of the clean economy. This is the real heart of the American economy. 100 metropolitan areas that, after decades of growth, constitute or take up only 12% of our land mass, but harbor 2/3 of our population and generate 3/4 of our gross domestic product. This is the new spatial geography of the economy. Cities, suburbs, exurbs, and the rural areas that on the periphery. Our research shows the extent to which these top 100 metros in the aggregate are driving growth in the clean economy. In 2010, they constitute an increasing share of clean economy jobs, almost 64%, and an outsized share, 74% of jobs in the clean tech industries, including very, very high shares in solar PV, battery technology, smart grid, and wind energy. Innovative clean jobs are predominantly in the top 100 metros because these are the places that concentrate the assets that drive innovation, from initial research through commercialization of innovation through ultimate deployment. The major metros are also leading the growth of clean economy jobs around the built environment. 78% of jobs in public mass transit, 90% of the jobs in green architecture, design, and construction, since moving people more efficiently and making buildings energy efficient is primarily an urban and metropolitan act in our country, given that's where most people live and travel and businesses located. Incredibly, metros include a decent share of clean jobs that are traditionally rural, at least 23% of jobs in resource-intensive activities like hydropower, sustainable forestry, and biofuels, and more than half of organic food and farming jobs. Now, metros obviously don't exist in the aggregate. They have distinct starting points and distinct assets, attributes, and advantages. So we dig deep to unveil the profile of each of the top 100 metros. 4 metros, New York, LA, Chicago, and Washington, are super-sized clean economy job centers with more than 70,000 jobs apiece in the clean economy in 2010. New York alone has more than 152,000 clean economy jobs. Other major metros, Philly, San Francisco, Atlanta, Boston, Houston, Dallas, they're also key players with more than 38,000 jobs apiece as of that year. This is not just about the large metros. Here's a group of small and medium-sized metros. They have more than 3% of their jobs in the clean economy. Albany, New York leads the way with an impressive 6% of their jobs in the clean economy, partly because that's where General Electric has its major headquarters. Now, the power of metros is the power of agglomeration networks and clusters. And our report finds that clusters, which is the proximity of firms to businesses and related industries, boost metros' growth performance in the clean economy, and metros facilitate clustering. What are we talking about? Professional environmental services in Houston, solar photovoltaic in LA, fuel cells in Boston, wind in Chicago, water industries in Milwaukee, and energy efficiency in Philadelphia. Now, we can talk about all this in the abstract. In many respects, it's best to see this in practice from the ground up. Let's travel to Philadelphia. It's our nation's 5th largest metropolitan area. It includes the city of Philadelphia and the surrounding counties. This is the 5th largest clean economy job center in our country. And here we can find the advanced research engines of the University of Pennsylvania and Drexel in University City, who have partnered together on clean energy research and have provided a steady stream of talented workers to public, private, and nonprofit firms and intermediaries. Now, these universities are part of the Greater Philadelphia Innovation Cluster based at the Navy Yard on the Delaware River. That consortium received about $130 million in federal funding from multiple agencies to demonstrate the efficacy of new building energy-efficient components, systems, and models. Now, that consortium had the strong support of City Hall, led by Mayor Michael Nutter, who has pioneered smart skills training in the energy-efficient sector, as well as the Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation, which has been an investor in the Navy Yard. And then, of course, there are the firms and the companies, the fuel of the economy located throughout the Philadelphia metro. Downtown, we find Veridity Energy, a small smart grid firm with powerful technology tools. And the density of the downtown supports a healthy mix of highly skilled service firms. Just around the corner, literally, is Real Win-Win, which provides financial services to companies making capital investments in energy efficiency. But in our country, metro economies cross city and county borders because different kinds of firms require different urban, suburban, and rural footprints. So if we look out to the suburb of Radnor, we find Iberdrola, the 2nd largest wind operator in the United States and a subsidiary, obviously, of a major Spanish renewable energy company, an example of the wave of foreign direct investment that can help the U.S. build out the clean economy. So this is the Philadelphia story. It reveals why cities and metropolitan areas in our country, and frankly in yours and elsewhere, power the economy. Hyperlinked networks of private firms and public and nonprofit institutions that fertilize ideas, share workers, extend innovation, enhance competitiveness, and clean growth. Here's the final proposition. Delivering the clean economy will require a new kind of economy shaping and placemaking at the metro scale. Now, in an ideal world, you would have a federal government, right? And the federal government would set a strong platform for a new kind of economy. It would scale up markets to catalyze demand for clean economy goods. It would drive innovation by investing in advanced R&D at scale over a sustained period of time. It would catalyze finance to produce and deploy more of what we invent. And it would align with cities and metros to realize the synergy of clustering in place. In the United States, circa 2012, we do not have a national government. Ideologues rule our airwaves. Washington is fundamentally broken. But it would be foolhardy to confuse the health of the nation's capital with that of the country as a whole, or the vitality of our federal government with that of our federal republic. In fact, the United States, or more precisely our cities and our metro areas, is awash in leadership. I call this the pragmatic caucus of political, business, civic, university, and environmental leaders who are putting place over party, collaboration over conflict, and evidence over ideology. And this pragmatic caucus is building the clean economy in the United States from the ground up, despite political odds and fiscal obstacles. In the process, it is triggering a fundamental shift in how cities and metros design and implement economy-shaping strategies. In the prior consumption economy, cities focused on amenities and actually minimized their differences with other metros. Communities followed a uniform Starbucks and Stadia recipe, irrespective of market condition and location. The next economy accentuates what is unique about different metros. What LA exports is different from what Las Vegas sells to the world. What makes Denver special is different from what drives Detroit. The next economy rewards metros which intentionally build from their assets and strengthen their strengths. The prior economy lacked any fiscal discipline in the United States. Cities and suburbs literally competed to move businesses a few miles across artificial political borders. The next economy rewards cities and suburbs and even nearby metros and rural areas with complementary assets that collaborate to compete rather than compete against each other. To do this at Brookings, we have set out to adapt the discipline of private sector business planning to the task of revitalizing and transitioning metro economies. The elements of metro business plans are simple and straightforward. Each metro does a market assessment of their unique profile and potential, their leading tradable sectors and clusters, the ecosystem of institutions and intermediaries, advanced research institutions, trade associations. Armed with this information, metros then set goals and objectives that build on their distinct advantages, devise strategies to meet those goals, get specific on how to operationalize and finance strategies, and finally have metrics to gauge progress. And then all those efforts are undertaken by a consortium of corporate, government, university, and environmental institutions that cut across jurisdictions, sectors, and disciplines and collaborate to compete. In the United States, we have worked with Northeast Ohio, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Greater Seattle to pioneer metropolitan business planning. And these teams in these places work collaboratively to flesh out detailed initiatives for their economy tailored to their own special assets and challenges. That's retooling manufacturing and retraining industrial workers in Northeast Ohio for new clean tech production and sustainable products, entrepreneurial activity and commercialization of innovation in the Twin Cities, and in Seattle, becoming the global hub of building energy-efficient technologies, not just for the American market, but for the world. These business plans are low cost but high impact. They are primed to attract private and public investment, produce jobs in the near term, but as important, retool economies for sustainable growth. Yet business planning can't be confined to traditional economic development strategies because economy shaping requires a new form of placemaking. Place, form, design, architecture, infrastructure, connectivity matters. Growing an export economy obviously requires that cities help their small firms export abroad, but it also requires that we build and retool the next generation of advanced production facilities and the underlying infrastructure to move goods, services, and ideas quickly and efficiently and sustainably by air, rail, sea, and land. Now, growing a low-carbon economy requires not only the invention of new technologies, but the construction of renewable energy facilities, the infrastructure to store and transport such energy, and service new sustainable products like electric vehicles, and the construction and retrofit of buildings to reduce energy use. Growing an innovation economy requires not only the generation of cutting-edge ideas at advanced universities and research labs, but the creation of large-scale, wired innovation districts that combine institution, labs, startup enterprises, and the mixed-use, mixed-income facilities that make up quality communities. And growing an opportunity economy requires metros not only to upgrade worker skills and education, but to develop in spatially efficient ways. Less low-density sprawl, more high-density nodes, so that workers can live closer to work and actually get to work in reasonable time via multiple nodes. Restructuring the economy requires us, in essence, to remake the form of cities and metros for a productive rather than consumption economy, for a sustainable rather than wasteful society. And all these elements, exports, low carbon, innovation, opportunity, have their own distinct special presence and footprint, but they also connect to each other and residential communities via multiple modes of transport and transit. This is a more holistic vision of infrastructure and placemaking than the one that has dominated urban planning for the past 25 years in the United States. It is messy, it is complicated, it is multidimensional, but this is the form that will drive modern, sustainable economies, and it's happening bit by bit. LA is greening its port and moving slowly to upgrade its freight rail systems to ensure that goods can be moved efficiently from what is the 6th largest port complex in the world. San Diego, about 2 hours south of LA, is investing in its low-carbon infrastructure by building a network of electric vehicle charging stations throughout the region to improve that region's energy independence, but also drive economic growth. Boston, pioneering a new kind of innovation district on its waterfront to take advantage of the strong assets of that city, strong universities, talented workers, growing concentration of life sciences and tech clusters. And Denver is building our nation's largest light rail system, 118 miles in total, to ensure that low and moderate income workers have ready access to jobs throughout the metro area. All these examples show the urban and metropolitan form and the corridors connecting metropolitan areas, adapting, transitioning, evolving to meet the new physical demands of a hyperkinetic global economy. None of this is easy. It requires a new kind of finance where public resources are used to leverage private sector capital, expertise, and risk. And in our country, it requires a new kind of federalism, a resorting of the roles and responsibilities between national government and then state, metropolitan, and city government. And finally, it requires the United States, which is an intensely insular place, to respect and reflect the advances in placemaking that have been underway in Europe for decades. The expansion of freight rail around Hamburg and Berlin, the implementation of congestion pricing in Stockholm, the evolution of innovation districts in cities like Barcelona, and the intricate web of cycling, transit, and commuter rail in this city, the green capital of Copenhagen. So let me end where I began. I believe we are in the process of a clean economy revolution. And I believe that this transition will be determined, shaped, and delivered disproportionately by cities and metropolitan areas in the world, in mature economies and rising nations alike. As in any industrial revolution, benefits will accrue to those firms and communities which are the first adapters, the first inventors, the first producers. To update the old maxim, to the innovative belong the economic spoils. More jobs, better jobs, accessible jobs, more investment, higher quality of life. Copenhagen and Denmark are obviously beacons of environmental progress in the world and sustainable development. So many people in the United States think of you as the gold standard in creating a livable, prosperous, cycling-obsessed society. But make no mistake, there are real economic benefits to this that you are only beginning to realize as the world continues to urbanize. Shakespeare got it wrong. There is something green in Denmark and Copenhagen. Embrace it, nurture it, extend it, make it and sell it to the world, and change the world. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruce, and I think that by the length of this applause, you can hear that this was really inspiring and really interesting. It was about primarily the US economy.
That's right.
But you know, it's something that we can learn so much from in this country. And the first and obvious question is, of course, how much of those findings that you've done in the US are transferable to Europe and to Denmark? Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Well, to a large extent, Europe and Denmark are ahead of the United States because I think, A, you recognize that the planet is warming, which we're still debating in the United States. But second, you recognize that this is a market proposition. And this is about innovation at the core, and whichever country is at the vanguard of innovative growth today will be able to produce jobs, not just in the near term, but over the long haul. So if I take the American definition and I apply it to Europe and I apply it to Denmark, I think what will easily be unveiled, be brought to sharp relief, is the fact that you have high concentrations in critical areas of the clean economy. The key is to figure out which ones, and then to build on those strengths and those distinctive assets. This is not like the consumption economy. In the consumption economy, a Walmart is a Walmart is a Walmart, right? Same design, same footprint, same goods, irrespective of where you are. But to be the leader of wind energy is about being at the vanguard of the productive, innovative export economy. That cannot be replicated, and if you start with that position, and if you strengthen that position, that will be the gift that keeps on giving.
Normally you say that size matters. So I can't help thinking, being a Dane, that some of the cities that you're talking about here are much bigger than this whole country. So we are, in this country, equivalent of one of the smallest states in the US, for example, Colorado. Doesn't that make those findings, how should we look upon that? Such a small country with, you know, small cities in Denmark are only maybe 10,000 inhabitants compared to small cities in the US with 100,000.
Well, I think, first of all, it's wrong to think about cities at that scale. What we need to be thinking about are metropolitan areas, where really are interconnected webs of cities and suburbs and rural areas. For too long, I think we've divided up our spatial landscape, and we've almost thought about competing against each other, when in a world of 20 million cities and metros in a China or in India, we need to be looking outward, not inward. So we need to collaborate to compete, we need to collaborate to grow sustainably, and we need to break down these lines, which are really mental divisions between cities, suburb, large and small municipalities. But if you focus on what you're good at in this world, and since the next economy and the clean economy is so much about innovation and the clustering of talent and the clustering of specialized knowledge and production, then a small place can be a leader and be an innovator, both for its city and metro, for its country, and more importantly, for the world. Denmark is a trading nation. You know, as we talked about the other night, 15% of your exports come from your clean economy. You understand trade because it's built into your DNA. The United States, frankly, is an inward-looking nation, the most diverse and the most insular at the same time. So we're learning how to be a trading nation, not just with our global companies, but more importantly, with our small and medium-sized enterprises.
Maybe you saw the map from the report that we're publishing today earlier with 2 city regions rather than a lot of small cities or larger cities. Yeah. So should we think about Denmark in terms of cities as maybe a country in the future with 2 big city regions, metropolitan regions?
I think that's the way of the world, and I understand there's a lot of history here, and there's a lot of culture, and there's a lot of allegiance to particular places and communities. But from an economic perspective, these places are interlinked. They're connected, and now with the internet, they're wired fundamentally. And so you do need to draw a different mental map of your nation. We need to do this in the United States. And then we need to collaborate, not just government to government, but the ecosystem of universities, trade associations, civic institutions, environmental organizations, labor unions. We need to break down these divisions if we're going to prosper and thrive, not just in the 21st century, but in the beyond.
Great. Now, I will let Bruce take a rest and a glass of water, and now I will give you the opportunity to discuss with your neighbor, the person sitting next to you, what you've just heard. You know, discuss the presentation by Bruce and not just the cool PowerPoint slides. I'm very envious, but think about the content as well. What surprised you? What made you wonder? What questions came to mind? Turn to your neighbor and discuss this for 2 minutes, and then we'll come back to you. 2 minutes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to hear so much noise. I will try to suppress it now, because we need to share a bit of what we have been discussing here. And I think actually I will go over here to begin with. Hi, Marie.
Hi.
We've got one of the 98 Danish mayors here in the room, Marie Stærke from Køge. And what did you discuss upon Bruce's presentation?
Well, one of the things we discussed was the fact that the new economy doesn't require high education among the workers, and that the opportunity to get more trained in your job and get better paid, was greater in the new economy and in the green economy, and that was very interesting. But the thing that
and a bit surprising, right?
Right. And the problem I'm sitting with in Køge is that the businesses says to me, your population isn't well educated enough so that we want to move our business to your municipality. And that is a bit opportune to what you are saying, so that was very interesting.
Mm. Do you like to comment on that, Bruce? I'm sure you've heard of Køge, but it's just it's just south of Copenhagen.
I think we need a much more varied view of what it means to be educated and skilled. In the United States, for about the past 25 years, we've convinced ourselves that we are moving to some kind of post-industrial economy that requires literally everyone to get 4-year degrees or graduate degrees. In my view, manufacturing matters, production matters. Many of those jobs require highly skilled workers, but those skills can be gained in secondary schools, in junior colleges, through labor unions and apprenticeships. We need a more varied view of what it means to be educated and skilled, and frankly, that just derives from a more holistic view of what the economy should look like. Going back to one of my points, a country that does not manufacture is a country that will innovate less over time. And both Denmark, Europe, and the United States need to fundamentally understand that.
And I think that's a really important point, because in many ways, Bruce, and I think that's what Marie also refers to, you are turning things a bit upside down. Right. I mean, this is not conventional wisdom, that you need to focus also on manufacturing.
Absolutely.
For many years, we've thought in this country, like in the US, it's fine that jobs, manufacturing jobs move to Asia, for example, because then we can do all the smart stuff. But what you're saying is that's not enough.
The smart stuff is embedded in manufacturing. And when you do your production in China, guaranteed the research and development and the design will move to China.
Yes.
So.
Okay, I'll turn to Mark here, Mark Vacher, who is a sociologist or anthropologist. Yes, by training, very hard word to pronounce. What did you discuss, Mark?
Well, I'm not sure we went to discussing, but we exchanged points of view. So, but what I'll do is I'll take the opportunity to ask you a question that I formulated even before the discussion, and it's about this announcement of the clean economy. You even used the word revolution, and it made me think about, I mean, this whole thing about announcing a new economy. I think it's a bit problematic, because what we see, I think one of the major challenges we face is that we have a lot of enterprises and companies which we now define as being unclean. I think the major challenge will be how to transform these established enterprises and businesses into something else. So there's a matter of transformation here rather than a revolution. And I wonder if you could maybe help us out there, because...
good question.
I think that's a very good point. And we are putting forward what is obviously an affirmative vision, and is what is obviously a work in progress. And frankly, in the United States, slow progress, because of uncertainty and unpredictability in our political system. But to some extent, what we're trying to say first is this is a very diverse and varied economy. Because in the United States, there's a cartoon vision of the clean economy. It's wind turbines or it's solar energy, and then the conversation stops. The companies understand better, but the citizenry has been convinced that it's only really those two segments. So first, we're trying to unveil how varied it is and how spatially distinct it is. And what that then does is say to everyone in the country, you can play in this economy, in community X or community Y or community Z, given your different starting points. In the United States, obviously, to get anything to change, particularly when you have so many subsidies embedded, tilted towards sprawl and the fossil fuel industries, you need to present this big vision of revolution and transformation. So it may be a bit hyperbolic at times, but I fundamentally believe we are transitioning to this. And again, the US likes a competition. We're a competitive people. And therefore, putting it into this sense of there's a revolution underway, and yet we're not quite in the party yet, is a way to rev up our competitive juices.
Great, Bruce, and I can assure you, you will get competition from Denmark. I'd like to turn to a former Minister for Agriculture and Foods, Henrik Høegh, who is sitting here also, and has taken part in the discussions during the year. What did you discuss on the basis of Bruce's presentation? Or do you have a question for Bruce?
Yes, I also have a question, but first of all, I would like to say it has been a very interesting speech, and I think it's really put the United States in a leader position in a clean and green economy. But now I am a politician, and I also like to be kidding a little, and I would like to ask you, where does these good ideas, this development, put the United States in international negotiations, in international agreements within 5 years, agreements within carbon reduction? Right now, we haven't seen so much help on that scene.
Well, help us out, Bruce.
So
You've got 2 minutes.
I'm here representing the United States. No, it really gets back to one of my major points. We do not have a functioning federal government in the United States right now. And I was obviously a major supporter of President Obama and worked in the administration for 6 months. But our national government is riven by partisan division and ideological polarization, which then affects our ability to interject ourselves in international negotiations and discourse. But at the state level and at the city level, innovation and clear thinking and pragmatic leadership is alive and well. And what happens today at the lower levels of our system will affect what happens at our national level, perhaps not in 2013, but hopefully sooner rather than later. So help is on the way, the cavalry is arriving, but it's coming from mayors and governors and business leaders and civic institutions.
One point that I actually had expected Henrik to make, but now I'll make it myself, is what about the rural areas? What you're talking about here is that cities will rule the economy.
Right.
So don't you like people who live in the countryside?
So I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I think the metropolitan scale envelops not just the cities and the denser urbanized areas, but suburban areas and, frankly, rural areas. A large portion of people who live in rural America live within metropolitan areas because we have sprawled and decentralized so much in our country. One of the only benefits of sprawl is that we can now show the very real and tangible connections between city living and rural economy. And food to market, particularly organic food to market, is only one of the examples of that. So I think in the modern economy, there are intricate networks between urban, metropolitan, and rural. And what we need to understand is our relationship together and the complementarity and the connectivity rather than the division. Division is something I think the political class likes to focus on. Economists likes to focus on connectivity. And that's what we should be unveiling. Ultimately, that will affect our politics.
Interesting. And this has not been planned. This is completely improvised. But some of the points that you make about the networks between cities and the countryside and production there, food, bio-based products and so on, is a major point in the report that we're publishing today. So really interesting. I'll go down here to Helle, who is a prominent Danish architect. Bruce talks a lot about cities and housing as well, and the importance of that. So did you have any questions for Bruce or something that surprised you in his presentation?
Well, first of all, I have listened to you before, Bruce, in San Francisco, and now today it's wonderful to hear you talk. What we discussed was that Flemming Borsgaard in his presentation talked a lot about the green or environmental sustainability, and you put a lot of pressure on the economic drivers in society, and I think there was a bit of a difference between your focus on the need for densification and dense development and nodes. And as Flemming was presenting this morning, we hear that in Denmark we aren't very happy about our villas. And that we, how are we actually going to design our society? I think the whole social sustainability aspect is also important, and what we hear in what we know from the social unrest from all over the world, but also with the Occupy Wall Street movement in the US. What are your thinking in terms of drivers coming also from below and not just top down?
Bruce?
Those are excellent questions. And I think, frankly, what I'm trying to provide in an American context is an antidote to both the Occupy movement and, frankly, the Tea Party movement. Both of those, from my perspective, are based in tremendous insecurity about where our economy is headed and the rising income inequality and wage and wealth divisions in our country, which frankly, I think is the logical, inevitable result of a failed growth model. Again, pre-recession in the United States, our growth model was a vision of an economy driven by consumption and debt and innovating in the wrong things. This is trying to posit a productive, sustainable, and inclusive growth model that can be delivered by different policies and delivered disproportionately by cities and metropolitan areas from the bottom up, primarily since our national government has failed. So we are trying to go right to the heart of the economic insecurity of the American workforce, who has seen their wages stagnate at a time when prices, particularly gas prices in our country, are rising, can't quite figure out how to make ends meet. Tuition payments are going up, debt is piling up for students. We need a vision of an economy with more jobs and better jobs and accessible jobs. The outcome, in my view, is sustainable development, both economically and environmentally. But our starting point is to go to the heart of what is the agitation in our country around economic insecurity.
Thanks a lot for that, Bruce. And by that, this concludes the session. So let's give Bruce again a warm thanks.
Appreciate that.